All right. Let's do some really exciting stuff, which is the things that make it worth it for me. The things that keep me going. The adrenaline, endorphin boosts, dopamine and endorphin boosts. So things that make it worth it for me, those moments. And you have to find those moments and cherish them. Because you know how our brain is really weird where like the good stuff that people tell us, we kind of forget immediately, or compliments that people pay us, right? But if somebody judges you or says something bad about you, you will remember that shit forever. Your brain will make sure of it. Depends on the personality, but like for sensitive people like me, right? Some things that like hit home where there's like a kernel of truth in it, even if they're totally unfair, it will stick with me forever. We have a tendency to do this to ourselves, especially with things that we're learning, right? With high expectations and perfectionists or whatever. Like we have a tendency to beat ourselves up. And I think it's really important to learn to recognize and really fully appreciate to the maximum, like suck all the marrow out of that bone. The moments when you have a win, the moments when you have these just, you know, feeling of just joy. Like for me, it's like here, and I'm just like, I get excited and I have this like, and like, you know, smiles bubbling up. I mean, I tend to have extreme emotions compared to some people. I'm a bit much for some people. So like my expressions of joy tend to be quite big, but like to take it, you know, like take that feeling by the balls and like, don't let go of it and remember it during the times when you're having a hard time. Make note, write those things down. It has really helped me. I have a bullet journal and I write stuff down sometimes. Like when I have a really awesome moment with my language learning journey, I'll write it down so I can remember it. When shit is really tough, I go through my journal and I'm like, oh, I remember when this happened. This was great. Do that. It's a huge motivation booster. So stuff that make it worth it for me, that keep me going. I mean, as I said before, I have an unfair advantage because I've already kind of learned English to the level that I am at now, mostly through immersion without realizing that that was what it was. So I know for a fact already that it works. And that helps me a lot. I don't have to blindly trust the method. I know for a fact that it works. For other people, this is a problem where they're like, oh, is this really working? Am I doing the right thing? Am I going to see results and stuff? It will be much, much harder for people who haven't already acquired a second language, especially through that kind of stuff, who know the effects that it can have, who have experienced it before. Having that experience before already with a foreign language or a second language, it's a huge advantage. So I just wanted to like mention this. I have an unfair advantage in this regard. So anybody who's already acquired a second language has an unfair advantage for any further language that they want to acquire because they know for a fact that it's possible. Just wanted to put that out there. But what I mean is you have to cherish moments. Moments like the first time I understood 2 sentences in a row in one of my all-time favorite K-pop songs without trying. I do occasionally look up lyrics and try to kind of translate them and like analyze the grammar because it's fun to me, not because it's a good learning method, but because I have fun doing it. So when I started this Korean journey, there was another quarantine, I think, going on, and just I was really kind of in a depressive phase. I was not doing well at the time. I was still recovering from my burnout. I had a huge burnout anyway, that's a whole other story, but it took me a long time to recover from that. I was basically not doing anything and I was in a really dark place mentally. And there's a specific artist, Sam Kim, whose music, like the Sun and Moon album, I listened to that on repeat, just up and down, up and down, up and down. I love this album. In fact, it's my number 1 Spotify album from 2021. Like, you know how at the end of the year you get the year rewind thing? Like, I listened to that so many times. And from, you know, the get-go, I listened to a lot of K-pop without understanding anything and really enjoying it. I've never had a trouble listening to music that I don't understand though, because I grew up listening to music in various languages. But yeah, so from the beginning, I listened to a lot of K-pop and stuff. And through K-pop, actually, that's the cool thing. So yes, I started with K-pop. K-pop and K-drama is what got me into Korean. But like through that, like the more you learn about the language or any given language, the more you learn about the culture and the history and just interesting bits and pieces. And K-pop for me was actually the opening door to Korean indie, R&B. I listen lots of R&B. I kind of really love Korean R&B, rock, all of that stuff, house, soul, jazzy stuff, like just kind of less mainstream artists, some chill out music, whatever. I just everything Korean, but like different genres, etc. So it was just kind of the opening gates, the K-pop. But yeah, I mean, Cam Sim, yay. And the first time I understood two sentences in one of his songs, it's one of my all-time favorite songs. It's Sunny Days, Summer Nights. I think in Korean it's 그 여름 밤. And the first time I understood this line and I realized, I realized what it meant. I started crying because I was so happy. So the lines are 기억해 지금 여기 사랑에 빠진 우리. And it's just such a beautiful line. And I was like, I don't know, it made me really emotional. You have to keep those moments close to your heart because they will carry you forward. And similarly, the day that I realized that I understood the whole song, this exact song, where previously in the very beginning, I think it was a few months in where I had repeatedly listened to it and I was immersing and doing stuff, and I realized I understood the entire two sentences without trying. Like I was just not actively trying to understand it. I was just listening to it and I caught it and I was like, oh, I understand it. That moment, it was so beautiful. And similarly, the moment I was listening to it, I think I was trying to fall asleep or something, and I was actively listening to it, kind of paying attention to what was being said, but not, straining or anything to comprehend. And I realized I understood the whole song. I understood all of it. And I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. It's because to me, these songs have so much meaning because this album specifically helped me through a really, really rough time in my life. And I did look up the lyrics for quite a few of these songs when I didn't understand them yet. But you don't automatically memorize and remember what everything means, right? There still is a difference between knowing what the song is about because you've read the translation and actually understanding everything that is being sung to you while you're listening to it. There's a huge difference without effort, right? It's effortless. There's a huge, huge difference, and it was very meaningful to me. And one song in particular, in English it's called The Weight. And the song is about why am I so kind of useless? Why am I so depressed? So kind of down, lethargic these days. I'm not the same person that I used to be, and I want to smile again like I used to. And I sing the same songs, I have the same smile, but it doesn't mean anything anymore. And this kind of meaning. And the funny thing is I connected to the song when I didn't understand a word of it. The melody, and it's very melancholy, it's very sad, and just I could feel the emotion. And the first time I heard it, I actually had tears in my eyes. And then I was like, I need to check what this song is about. And I read the translation and I just couldn't believe it, because this was exactly what I was feeling at the time. Because of my burnout and I was kind of depressed. I was basically experiencing depression. I just wasn't myself anymore. I'm usually the me that people know is very happy and very smiley and all of that stuff. And I just wasn't that anymore. And the song I connected with so deeply. It was insane. I only looked up the lyrics once and then never again. So I knew roughly what the song was just about, and I could connect to it, and I never kind of specifically looked it up again. And again, bit by bit, I started understanding more and more sentences in the song, just listening to it naturally with ease, until there was a moment where I decided I actually wrote down the whole lyrics in Korean and made a translation myself, because the English translations are usually shitty, because I understood enough with just some gaps for me to feel the need to do that, because it's a song that has a lot of meaning to me. and that kind of stuff. And it was just so, and now those are two of the songs where I literally understand every word in it, and it just makes me so happy. This is actually one of my favorite things. So I listen to a lot of Korean music. So not just K-pop, it's kind of a mixture, like a lot. And I don't actually really listen to English music anymore. Just here and there when there's like a really banging song where I'm like, it's giving me all of the dopamine I need it in my playlist. Occasionally I will have one, but overwhelmingly it's Korean. And it's one of my favorite things. Like, I have playlists that are hours and hours long. So I have one that's like a collection, and then I have ones that are separate depending on the feeling I want, like happy music and sad music, all of that stuff. And I love that feeling when I kind of decide, okay, I'm gonna hit my playlist that has like all of the songs on them, which is like, I don't know, 20 hours long or something. I can't know what's gonna come up. And a song comes up that I haven't listened to in months. And I start realizing, again, without like trying, actively listening maybe, but like usually when I'm listening to K-pop, I'm like doing stuff, or I'm running or whatever. I'm doing other stuff that I'm concentrating on. So I'm not concentrating on actively trying to understand it. I love that feeling when I listen to something that I haven't listened to in a really long time, and all of a sudden I realize I just understood the entire verse. And it makes me so happy. It's one of my favorite things. I love it so much. There's another song that I really love that I used to listen to up and down, and then I kind of lost interest and moved on. It's what is it called? I have to check. 안녕 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 네 앞에서 바보처럼 웃게 돼. Hello Tutorial by Zion T. It's great, featuring Sulgi. 인사까진 연습했는데 거기까진 문제 없었는데 네 앞에 서면 바보처럼 웃게 돼 평소처럼 말하면 돼. So this is a song I really liked, but I didn't have like a deep emotional connection or anything with it. So I didn't look up the lyrics. I had a phase where I listened to this for a very long time, and then I hadn't listened to it for quite a while. And it came up again in my rotation, and I started realizing that I didn't understand every word, but I understood the story. It's one of those few songs that has an actual like, kind of a story in it, and what it was about. It's basically about trying to practice to say hello in the mirror, because like you just smile like an idiot in front of the person that you're like, and it's a duet. So both of them, like he's like, I just want to naturally say hello to you, but I can't, because every time I see you, I'm just smiling like an idiot and I can't say anything. I'm just trying to get up the courage to just say hello, right? And she's like, actually, I know you like me. I've been waiting for you to like tell me or just say hello to me. And then they have this thing together, and it's so cute. And I didn't know what it was about until one day it came up in my rotation, and I listened to it, and I the moment I realized, wait, I understand like what's being said, I like kind of paid attention to the song and what it was about, and I realized I understood almost the whole thing. I was like, oh, this story is so cute. And it's those moments, you know. You might not have it with music. Maybe you're not into Korean music or K-pop or whatever, and but just find those moments for you that keep you going, that have like bring you that joy, that unexpected joy, especially as well. You know, I just love that about listening to the music. It gives me little boosts of dopamine here and there. I never know when maybe another song comes up and I will understand another sentence. Sometimes as well, it's really strange where even a song that's in my heavy rotation, I will understand like little words here and there, or little sentences here and there. And then sometimes from one day to the next, it's like there's a knot that opens in my brain, and all of a sudden a sentence becomes clear that was gibberish like 3 hours ago. It's really weird. I don't know, but this happens. It's literally like it almost feels like there's like a plop in my ears, and all of a sudden I like matrix that shit. I just understand it all of a sudden. It's really strange, but I love that. It's one of my favorite things. Where are my notes? So starting to understand more and more K-pop lyrics. And even as I said before, at the very, very beginning, my first 2 sentences in a row that I understood, or my first word here and there that I caught, is just from the very get-go, this was something that kept me going because it's literally probably my favorite thing in the whole process. The moments when I am not actively listening to something or not actively trying to understand it and it just comes to me and it's a new thing I know that I haven't understood before. That's my favorite. It's my favorite moments. It was also the easiest for me. I think I said this before kind of, but it's like the easiest thing for me to switch completely to Korean because I'm cool with listening to music without being able to understand it. And I'm really into the Korean music at the moment anyway. And there's so many different genres. Like you can find your music genre in Korean. It is possible. It will not sound exactly the same, of course, as in English or in whatever language you listen to it to, but it's as in with any country, any language, you have musicians that do all kinds of really cool stuff. And so there is music in Korean that you will like. If you like listening to music in your own language, you will like listening to music in Korean. You just have to find the genre that is for you. Not everything is about K-pop. I love it though. No shame. So it's the only thing that I've successfully been able to completely switch and like not really look back. Another success, the Olly Richards Short Stories in Korean book. Let me get it. This boy, it's so used now that it's like almost falling apart. I know it says intermediate, but actually it's really beginner. So if you want to get into reading in Korean, I actually highly recommend this. I know some people say that like you shouldn't engage in material that's been dumbed down. I say fuck that. You don't talk to a child the way you talk to an adult. There's an entire series on YouTube that's like an expert in a field explaining the field that they are an expert in to children up to other experts in the field. And the language you use and the words that you use changes. So I think it's absolute bullshit. People saying like, oh, you shouldn't engage with material that's been dumbed down. Yes, you should absolutely engage with material that's been dumbed down for you in the beginning, as long as you keep moving up and you keep challenging yourself. And the thing is with this, I think I started reading this, I don't know when I would have to look it up when exactly I started reading it. It's already I think I was already a few months into my Korean studies. So not right at the beginning. I was specifically looking for engaging content in Korean to read because I did have the Talk to Me in Korean reading for beginners, but like it was just boring to me. And also I found it really hard because yes, they're short stories, but every short story is about a different subject and there's a bunch of new vocabulary in it. And so it makes every story really hard for me. And I just didn't enjoy it. I have not managed to make it through, I bought them, but I have not managed to make it through the Korean conversations for beginners and all of that stuff either. I just find it boring. Or I did anyway. I haven't looked at it in months, so maybe I'll look at it again. Maybe it's better now. This though, I mean, some people I know don't like it. I really enjoyed this. The stories are just long enough, so they're about 3 to 4 chapters each. The chapters are very short, 1, 2, 3, 4 pages or something, 4 to 5 pages per chapter. Very simple language. It's not written in the narrative style. It's written in casual 존댓말, if that makes sense. So the yo form, there's dialogue in it and stuff. There's lots and lots of repetition, which some people I know find annoying, but it's the best. This is literally such a good introduction to reading because it teaches you a lot of the basic reading vocab. He recommends you read it through without looking anything up, but like that's kind of painful for me, so I tend to look up. They have like a vocabulary list of some of the words that are in the chapters, but usually I have to look up several. I actually decided to write in the book, so I like looked stuff up in the beginning. Let me find one where I didn't do that for every page. I just did it for some. Let me find one where there's a lot. Yeah, like this stuff. Like I still had to look up a lot. So when I first started reading this, it was very hard. I had to look up almost every word. This is a good introduction to reading because it teaches you stuff like 대답했어요 and 소리쳤어요, which is, you know, shouted, answered, whispered, growled. All of these words that are used to describe how somebody says something or like, I thought, I realized. All of these kind of words, there's a lot of them in there, and they get repeated over and over again because it's dumbed down. So they're not making an effort to try and use more complex ways of expressing it. I have the personal feeling that the content actually gets a little more difficult from story to story. And so you will read the same word over and over again quite a few times, which some people find annoying, but it's so perfect for a beginner because that's what you want from immersion. Like, you get exposed over and over again to the same words, the words that are used frequently. And so the meaning of specific words like 대답하다, etc. will like get ingrained. There's a lot of words I had to look up here. It'll really teach you. And the thing is, when I first got this book, it took me, I measured it because I was curious. So for 1.5 pages, 45 minutes. Okay. But I was so happy because no matter how slow I was reading it, it was comprehensible to me. Yes, I had to look up a lot and it was still hard, but it was comprehensible. And throughout, the cool thing is because they're short stories and there's short chapters, there's like a summary again as well to make sure you understood, etc. You can read them several times over. With each read, you will understand more. And with each chapter, you will understand more because it's within the same story. So the same names and the same types of characters and the kind of themes will come up. I learned the word for number because of this very specific story where this guy was looking for 3 numbers. It's a really cute story, actually. I actually cried at the end. It's 나무 상자, so the wooden box. This story, I kind of don't want to spoil it, but like this old guy, he's looking for 3 numbers and he's going to 3 different people to find the number, and this word gets repeated over and over again. And that's how I learned it, in this really simple story, right? And so I now know the word for pirate. I know that's a little bit useless for some people, but I still think it's cool. I also know the word for night, which is kisa, which makes me laugh all the fucking time because every time I hear bus driver or taxi driver, I chuckle to myself because it's the same, it's a homonym with night. So it's not a taxi driver, it's a taxi night. It just makes it fun for me. So yeah, I highly recommend it. And it was really emotional for me when I realized I could actually understand it with effort, but it was possible. That made me super happy. And now this is easy to me. I mean, not the entire book, but this first one especially, Mikin Bibimbap, I've read a lot of times. They have the audio available as well. If you download the app for like €5 more, you can also get the audio read by a native Korean, which is also super helpful. But yeah, it's like really simple Korean. So it's 오빠, 나 여기 있어. But like all of these words, like, called him, 왜 줄야? 제가 대답했어요. Right? 오늘 우리 한국에 가잖아. 기억해? Stuff like that. So it's really, really simple, but you kind of get the repetitiveness in there. Oh, I'm sorry. I just zoned out because I was cringing at my pronunciation. But yeah, I really recommend this because you can read it fairly early, like reading an actual story, and they're not that bad. Like some of them have like fun twists in them and stuff. To me, at least, it was really exciting and it made me really happy. I know it's not for everybody because, first of all, fiction isn't for everybody, and like maybe these particular stories like feel even too childish or whatever. However, I love young adult novels as well, so this type of writing style is not, I don't mind it. And it's cool because there's like a story in the real world, then there's a pirate story with like time travel involved, there's like a pseudo monster story, there's a sci-fi story, there is a story about Vikings, there's a story in a fantasy world about a knight, and like, I love it. I think it's really good for beginners. So, and you can get a lot out of this. Another thing that was awesome is the first time I understood and laughed at Korean comedy, like a skit, a gag. It was so good. Maybe I can find it and put it in there. It's so good. I actually cried laughing because I thought it was so funny. but it's a play on words. And that makes me so happy because when you understand puns in a language, I think actually, funnily enough, one of the SpongeMind podcasts talked about this, but I completely agree with this. When you start understanding puns and dad jokes, like ajushi jokes, ajushi gag, or play on words, it's so satisfying because it's fairly complex. Like this type of humor is actually fairly complex. I know we call it dad jokes because they're stupid, but if you think about it, understanding dad jokes requires you to know all of the different meanings and nuances that word can have because it's a play on words. So if you understand humor that's based on wordplay, that's really sweet. Like, it's just, I love it. So there's this one skit that's basically playing with the names of people. And so the first one I saw was, they have this gag is fairly popular, I think, and they have this gag in like various versions. I forgot what the thing is called. Like it's a specific comedy group or show or something. I'll try and put it in the description, or maybe I'll even blend in the specific video.
이름
뭐?
이름
뭐?
이름이 뭐냐고.
맞아.
뭐가 맞아?
맞다고?
뭐?
왜?
이름
뭐?
이름
뭐?
이름이 뭐냐고.
맞다고?
뭐가 맞아?
그래 맞아.
이름
뭐?
이름
야,
이름
야,
이름
야.
야?
왜?
야 임마.
왜 임마?
뭐라고?
왜 불러?
너 말고 너 이름이 뭐냐고.
맞다고.
야 조용히 해.
나 조용히 있었어.
There you go. It's so funny. The first time I didn't understand the whole thing. I understood parts of it. I had to re-listen to it several times and like try and somehow look things up while not knowing how they were spelled for some of the words to like understand the whole thing. But I got the gist of the joke and it was super fucking funny to me. And that made me so happy. Because when you start understanding the humor in a language, like a lot of this humor, as I said before, is like a lot of it is based on wordplays and their meanings and stuff. It feels so good. But yeah, I already mentioned this, but reading Harry Potter and reading along with the audiobook, courtesy of Claudie, was huge for me. Big boost in motivation. That's a big one. Another thing that I love and that keeps me going, that's starting to happen when you understand more, is like I'm starting to catch additional subtext and nuances in Kdrama that doesn't come across in the English subtitles. Weirdly, even though I still can't watch it without English subtitles because there's too much specialty vocabulary that I just don't understand and I don't get it. But with some of the simple things, or like just things that are difficult to translate, like the whole dynamic change and power dynamic change or mood change that can happen when a character switches from 존댓말 to 반말, just kind of the language grade switch that can happen and the meaning that has and the subtext that it can carry, it adds so much. It adds so much. And like understanding when it's happening and why it's happening, it just gives me so much additional enjoyment of a lot of the scenes. Some scenes are just, they hit you so much harder when you get that kind of stuff. I'm thinking of a particular scene because I saw it mentioned in a video. You know how Squid Game got really, really popular. There's a specific scene where the Indian character gets, I don't even know if I want to spoil it. But if at this point you haven't seen Squid Game yet, like, have you been living under a rock? Just skip a little bit further forward if you don't want to have any spoilers. So the Indian character gets screwed over by one of the other characters. I forgot the name, so I'm just gonna call them Indian character and dude. The dude has asked the Indian character to call him Hyung, right? So it's a closer form of like, they're getting closer. He asked him to call him Hyung. And so there's this moment where the Indian character is looking for the dude, but dude has been screwing him over in this game and basically he's gonna die. And there's this moment where he turns to camera and he calls Hyung, and it hits so hard because of the Hyung. It's not like, it means so much more than, because before that he had been calling him, I think, 사장님. And so it's like, oh my God. And stuff like that. Or like in romance dramas, I love when they have these like play things going on, or when somebody's arguing and all of a sudden one character starts like, swearing at them in panmal, or like the tension in the room when a character uses a form of speech that they shouldn't have used in this particular situation. And there's so much subtext that gets lost in translation if you don't know about the various levels of formality and politeness. It's just, I get so much enjoyment out of that. I love that. It's kind of like being part of a secret club, like you understand something that nobody else understands. Because I actually managed to get, so one of my friends into Kdrama and my dad. I'm watching a Kdrama with my dad. I'm watching Encounter with him. He loves it because those two, the romance is just so cute. In Korean, it's 남자친구, but it's Encounter in English. And it's so cute. And there are some scenes that make use of this device where the speech that they use matters. And so I had to stop the thing and explain it to my dad. I'm like, this actually means so much more than you think it does from just subtitles because of this and this and that. And like, I don't know, I think it's so enjoyable. And like you're part of a secret club. It's kind of like the moment, I remember this as if it was yesterday because it was so great. I love when filmmakers are specific and when they're not afraid to go away from the whole Americanized way of doing things. There is a very good example of this in Inglourious Basterds. So there's a moment in Inglourious Basterds where there's a British spy who is, fluent in German. I mean, he has a peculiar accent, but they do point it out. But if you know anything about languages, it's an English accent. So as a German speaker, it's really good. Like, the actor, it's great. So he's trying to get away with, there's this one guy who's like suspicious of him. And there's this really tension moment and all of that stuff. And there's a moment, it gets explained later on, but there's a moment where he orders 3 beers and he does this. And this is the British way of saying 3. In Germany or Austria, we say 3 like this. And it gets explained later. But the beauty of the secret club thing is that when I watched this movie, I watched it in Austria, in Vienna, with a bunch of friends. The cinema was packed. And I love that Tarantino did this because it gives different audiences from different backgrounds a different experience. Everyone who's from a German-speaking background, we were sitting in the cinema, and when the guy did this, the entire audience went like everyone knew. I'm actually getting goosebumps just thinking about it. This moment was beautiful because we knew at the same time that we realized this, the entire audience was just like, fuck, right? And I had so much enjoyment out of this moment because it felt so special, because I knew that an American audience wouldn't know what was going on, or a British audience. They wouldn't checking it, as I would say. They wouldn't get it. But everybody who was from a German background or a German-speaking background immediately knew what was going on. And that is awesome. I love that he did that. It's beautiful. And so it's very similar to that. I feel like I'm starting to be part of a secret club where I get to enjoy K-drama in a way that people who do not learn Korean don't get to enjoy. I mean, generally Netflix subtitles aren't too bad, but I just feel like I'm getting more out of it because very, very often something will be translated a certain way, but what they said in Korean was actually something different that has a slightly different nuance. And I really enjoy that I'm able to know these, or even cultural backgrounds, or even I'm starting to understand some of the idioms that are being reused and things, but that kind of stuff. Oh gosh, I love it. So that keeps me going. What else? Yeah, I already talked about this in the very beginning, but having to look up less and less vocabulary or entire sentences in on Papago in the retro vocab decks that I'm still working through. More and more, it's just proper plus one sentences where I just have to look up one word. Except, as I said, for the news reel style ones. Also, realizing, I had this realization not too long ago. In fact, probably only last month. So at the 1 year mark, I've started to realize that I'm starting to have entire conversations in Korean in my head. I like to imagine little scenarios and things. Again, it's a storyteller in me. I'm a daydreamer. I make stuff up in my head because it amuses me. And I started doing it in Korean. And I have entire conversations in Korean in my head. And I have this entire stuff where I imagine going, or situations that I could be in Korea, and things that I could talk about with people, and I literally make up what is being said. There's probably lots of mistakes in there and everything, but still, I think it's really cool. I can form sentences in my head. I don't, not with my mouth, but I can do it in my head. So yeah, like, 진짜로 말하는 거 정말 어려워요. 근데 머릿속에 자주 한국어 말해요. It's just really painful for me. Anyway, to hark back to something that's frustrating for me, which is the navigating Korean websites, I am slowly getting better at it. As I said, 확인 is one of the things that I now understand. Login, things like that. Starting, but it's still mostly a struggle. But getting there. I managed to sign up for Ready Books today without too much trouble. So that was good. Yeah, listening to the SpongeMind podcast. I have mentioned this before, all the Korean versions, and understanding more and more. I am re-listening to a lot of them because I just enjoy it. And now I tend to, so the first listen through, I literally did, English first and then the Korean version. Now I tend to just randomly sometimes put on a Korean version and I will still understand like 80-90% of it. Not necessarily from the word count, but just what is going on, like the message that is being transmitted, so to speak. But it's nice because I understand them to the point where I don't have to concentrate hard on understanding. I can just listen to it while doing another thing and have like a different thought in between where I literally can't hear, like it's like you don't hear what's being said, and then pay attention again and catch up to where we were theme-wise in the conversation. Like, it's not hard for me to get back into where the conversation is continuing. Whereas with material that I am not familiar with, or that where I understand less, if I lose a couple of sentences in between, I'll be totally lost and it'll be really hard to catch up into what is going on. But with the SpongeMind ones by now, funnily enough, they create these sponge loops where you're supposed to like listen to the same thing over and over again. I never listened to a single one of them, but what I do is I listen to the Korean version of the podcast over and over again. I use those as my sponge loops. But yeah, that's really cool. Some things as well that like some of the awesome stuff that makes me really happy is like when you watch random YouTube content. It's happened to me that I started watching some random YouTube video and I suddenly realized a good minute or two into the video when a sentence came up that I couldn't guess what it meant. And that's only when I realized, wait, I don't have English subtitles on. It was so great. Oh, it's one of the best feelings. I forgot to turn them on because I didn't need them. Like, that was amazing. That's mwah. It's beautiful. So yeah, no, but seriously, what I mean is try to forget all the stuff that frustrates you and really focus only on the things that bring you joy. Don't beat yourself up for all the stuff that you don't understand, but congratulate yourself for all the stuff that you do understand. Really focus on that. And like, oh my gosh, like this was a really long, complicated sentence, but I understood 2 words. That's fucking awesome, Even catching 2 words at native speed is not easy in the beginning. It's really hard when you can't parse the language yet. Parsing just means that you understand where one word starts and one word ends. Because if you really think about it, when you listen to a foreign language first, it's basically all just, it just flows together. You have no idea where one word ends and one word begins and all of that stuff. You don't. And so you need to learn first how to parse the language, meaning to recognize where the words are, kind of things. And so native speakers are very fast. Oh, duh. So like even in the very, very beginning, when you're just listening to a lot of Korean, but it's all gibberish to you, it's all just one long sausage of sentences, sounds without any meaning, just catching a word here and there is a big deal. It's awesome. congratulate yourself for those kind of things. Don't beat yourself up for like not understanding all the things that you still don't understand. Even if it's literally just choa, right? I'm like, oh, he just said choa. I know this word. Or 진짜. Or whatever it may be. Or the sentence ended in 했어요. So it's past tense. Past tense did something. That's great. Like all of this kind of stuff in the beginning, like try and find the excitement in all the little things that you do understand instead of getting frustrated and beating yourself up about the things that you don't understand. This is what I mean with like, I get so joyful. Even just one extra word in some song lyric that I didn't understand before makes me happy. Even at the level where I'm at now, where generally it tends to be sentences rather than just single words. There's still sometimes sentences where like, I don't understand anything except for this one word at the end. And I'm still like, okay, that's a win. I didn't understand this verb yesterday, for example. I don't know. Just celebrate those things, right? Celebrate the small wins because they'll keep you going. Basically, don't mourn the mountain of unknowns that you have yet to climb. Celebrate every single step that you take, and you will end up climbing the mountain without realizing that you do. That being said, of course, we all have bad days, /weeks, /months. Like, it's okay to occasionally feel frustrated, right? Like, don't beat yourself up for feeling frustrated. Like, don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up is what I'm saying. Because, like, some of us do this sometimes, you know? Like, feeling guilty for feeling guilty. Does that make sense? Is that a thing? Yeah, it's a thing. I see you. Don't do that. It's cool. Those of you who know meditation, it's kind of like a meditation. When you think about other thoughts, acknowledge that they're there and then come back to your breath. It's the same thing. It's like, okay, I guess I'm frustrated right now. Let yourself feel the frustration for a little bit and then go, okay, let it go, right? The thing is also, even if you're only a month in or so, remember there's always something you can be proud of. On day 2, you will know more Korean than you did on day 1. Okay? Always remember that. There is progress. Even if you're a month in, you already understand 100% more Korean than about, I'm going to say, 98% of people that you cross on the street, if not 99. And that's pretty awesome. Think about that. Even in your first month or your first week, you speak more Korean than 90% of the people you will walk across on the street. Well, unless you're in Korea. Then of course no. But if you're like me learning Korean in a different country than South Korea. If you're in Korea, I cannot use the simile, I'm sorry. But you know what I mean. All right, let's finish this up, shall we? So what am I gonna do now? What are my plans?